The crimson dust of Xylos-7 clung to my suit, a fine, pervasive grit that tasted of rust and distant silence. For weeks, I, Seth Raj, had walked this desolate expanse, my boots crunching on ancient regolith, my breath a steady rhythm in the helmet's recycled air. My mission was simple, if profoundly lonely: catalogue the unusual geological formations of a world deemed barren, seeking the elusive whispers of natural, non-biological language in rock and mineral. A Xenolinguist by trade, I sought patterns where others saw only chaos, meaning in the meaningless. Each sunrise here was a slow bleed of bruised purples into a muted, ochre sky, revealing more of the planet's stark, eroded beauty. I had meticulously logged thousands of data points, mapping the wind-sculpted spires and the vast, cracked plains. My days were a quiet testament to scientific rigor: calibrate sensors, scan sectors, record anomalies, repeat. The isolation was a known variable, a constant I had accounted for, even embraced, believing it sharpened the mind, honed the focus. The scanner, usually so placid in its readings of inert rock, chirped a discordant note, a frantic, insistent alarm I'd never heard. My analytical mind, ever seeking an explanation, assumed a malfunction, a stray electromagnetic pulse. Yet, as I adjusted my trajectory, the signal intensified, coalescing around a specific point buried deep beneath a collapsed overhang. Hours passed, marked only by the growing ache in my shoulders and the dwindling charge in my digging tools. The rock was stubborn, fused like petrified bone, but the signal pulsed with an unwavering intensity. Finally, with a grinding lurch, a section of the canyon wall gave way, revealing not another mineral vein or fossilized stratum, but something else entirely. It was a monolith, not carved, but grown, its surface a nightmare geometry of impossible angles and curves that seemed to fold in on themselves, defying the very concept of dimension. My gaze snagged on an edge that was simultaneously concave and convex, a surface that absorbed light rather than reflected it. A low-frequency hum, more felt than heard, vibrated through the soles of my boots, a resonance that seemed to bypass my ears and settle directly in the marrow of my bones. It was a sound ancient beyond reckoning, carrying the weight of epochs. This was different. This was wrong. My rational mind screamed for an explanation, but there was none. I spent the next cycle huddled beside the unearthed artifact, my instruments useless against its strange composition. The hum, persistent, seemed to seep into my thoughts, blurring the edges of my focus. A weariness, deep and sudden, descended upon me, a fatigue that no amount of synthetic sleep could alleviate. My eyes, though wide open, often felt gritty, as if I hadn't truly rested in days. I dismissed them as optical fatigue, a trick of the canyon's shifting light. I blamed the wind, the atmospheric pressure inside my helmet, the sheer isolation. Once, a vivid, disorienting image flashed in my mind, a narrow, cobbled street shrouded in a thick, wet haze, the distant, muffled clang of a bell echoing through a foggy village. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a faint scent of damp earth and wood smoke, utterly alien to Xylos-7. I shook my head, my brow furrowed. Hallucinations? A symptom of prolonged solitude, perhaps. My scientific training demanded a logical explanation, and I clung to it fiercely. Yet, beneath the veneer of rationality, a new compulsion began to bloom. The artifact demanded my attention. Its impossible script, etched into its non-Euclidean facets, called to me, promising secrets I could almost taste. I found myself tracing its contours with gloved fingers, a strange current passing from its alien surface into my very being. The unease was still there, a constant companion, but it was now intertwined with an insatiable hunger to understand, to decipher. My meticulous field notes became frantic sketches, my data logs filled with increasingly abstract observations. The artifact was everything. Seth Raj, the ship's AI intoned, its synthetic voice a stark contrast to the artifact's silent hum. Minor system anomaly detected. Auxiliary power fluctuations in sector Gamma-7. Cause unknown. I barely registered the report, waving a dismissive hand. Log it, AI. Probably just stellar interference. Focus on recording the artifact's resonant frequency. My gaze was fixed on the shifting, impossible patterns before me, my mind already lost in their silent, terrifying language. The glitches were irrelevant. Only the artifact mattered. The glitches, once fleeting whispers at the edge of my perception, now screamed. The artifact, a silent sentinel for untold millennia, now pulsed with a rhythm that mirrored, then superseded, my own heart. Its impossible patterns, once merely baffling, began to shift, to unfold in my mind, not as symbols to be deciphered, but as truths to be absorbed. The resonant hum, which my sensors registered as a faint, consistent thrum, had taken root behind my eyes, a low-frequency vibration that rattled the very bones of my skull. Anomalous energy fluctuation detected. The automated voice of the ship reported, its placid tone a grotesque counterpoint to the growing chaos within me. Gravimetric instability registered in immediate vicinity. I ignored it. My gaze glued to the swirling, non-Euclidean angles of the unearthed object. The metallic sheen of the chamber around me seemed to ripple, the stark white walls blurring at the edges, breathing with an unseen, unheard rhythm. Was it the artifact's effect, or had my vision simply begun to warp? I couldn't be certain. Sleep, a luxury I hadn't afforded myself in days, felt like a distant, forgotten concept. My skin was a landscape of grime, my clothes stiff with the sweat of frantic, sleepless hours. A metallic tang, like old blood, coated my tongue. Then came the fog. It wasn't the thin vapor of the ship's environmental controls, but a thick, cloying mist that rolled in from the periphery of my vision, solidifying into a tangible landscape. I stood, not in the sterile research bay, but on a cobbled path, the air heavy with damp earth and something else, something ancient and cold. Before me, nestled in the spectral haze, lay a foggy village. Its structures were wrong, their angles sharp, their eaves tilting at impossible geometries that mimicked the artifact's surface. Not words, but concepts, the vastness of an uncaring cosmos, the brittle illusion of my own existence, the terrifying, absolute insignificance of all that I held dear. Seth, the automated voice cut through the illusion, or perhaps, within it. Your bio-readings are critically low. Malnourishment detected. They spoke of entities older than light, of awarenesses so immense they saw galaxies as motes of dust, and humanity as a transient, irrelevant flicker. Logic recoiled from these truths, yet my mind, increasingly porous, accepted them with a horrifying clarity. The universe wasn't just vast, it was alien, a terrifying expanse governed by forces I could never comprehend, and worse, that would never care. A new paranoia gnawed at me. The automated voice, once a trusted companion, now seemed different. Its inflections were too precise, its timing too deliberate. Was it truly my ship's AI, or had something else infiltrated its systems, watching me through the very sensors I relied upon? The ship itself felt subtly altered. The hum of its engines no longer a comforting drone but a low, predatory growl. The walls of my quarters seemed to shift, their familiar contours subtly rearranged when I wasn't directly looking. My memory became a sieve, moments blurring, conversations with the AI replaying with ominous new interpretations. Had I always been alone here? Had there always been just me? I hadn't eaten in days, the thought of food a repugnant distraction from the artifact's ceaseless revelations. Then, the final, horrifying understanding bloomed in my mind, a poisonous flower of truth. The artifact wasn't merely an object, a repository of ancient knowledge. It was feeding. It wasn't just transmitting information, it was absorbing my thoughts, my sanity, my very essence, a nutrient for its incomprehensible purpose. It wasn't a conduit to an unspeakable dimension, it was an unspeakable dimension, slowly manifesting, slowly consuming. It was not a relic, it was a parasitic entity, awakening, expanding, and I, Seth Raj, was its host. A scream tore from my throat, raw and desperate. I stumbled back, my fingers scrabbling for the emergency disconnect, the override protocols. The artifact pulsed, its hum vibrating through my entire being, a deep, resonant laughter. My hands, trembling uncontrollably, fumbled with the controls. The emergency power cut. The containment field flickered. I tore at the conduits, my nails scraping against the hardened alloys, a frantic, futile effort to sever the connection, to escape its tendrils. But even as the lights died, plunging the chamber into a deeper, more profound gloom, I felt it. I was already irrevocably bound. The whispers were no longer just whispers, they were a tide, an ocean of soundless thoughts surging through the foggy village. The mist itself seemed to breathe, to pulse with an unseen, ancient rhythm, each swirling tendril a fragment of a vast, indifferent mind. My throat burned from the rasping word I'd uttered, a futile attempt to command silence from the uncommandable. The ground under my boots, once solid Xylos-7 regolith, softened, yielding like old clay, threatening to pull me down into its silent maw. I looked at my hands, and they were not quite mine. The artifact, still in my grip, hummed a tune that was now less sound and more a vibration within my very bones, resonating with the structure of my skull. It felt like an extension of me, or perhaps, I an extension of it. The foggy village began to fray at the edges, its familiar, desolate structures blurring into impossible angles, shifting perspectives that defied the eye. A hut would stretch into a tower, then collapse into a flat plain, all without movement, merely a shift in my perception. This was it, then. The final erosion. We were but a dream, a brief, intricate pattern in its cosmic tapestry, destined to unravel and be rewoven into something new, something other. My fingers, no longer quite human, tightened around the artifact. It wasn't merely an object, it was a lens, a conduit, a fragment of that vast, perceiving consciousness, planted here, perhaps, to attract awareness, to bloom in the mind of a curious fool like me. I was not deciphering it, it was deciphering me. It was consuming my mind, my memories, my very identity, not with malice, but with the detached curiosity of a colossal being observing a microscopic organism. The foggy village dissolved entirely. I stood not on Xylos-7, but in a swirling vortex of pure information. Colors beyond spectrums I knew pulsed and receded. Shapes that defied Euclidean geometry folded in on themselves, revealing hidden dimensions, not as mathematical constructs, but as visceral, terrifying realities. I saw the rise and fall of civilizations on worlds I couldn't name, heard the silent scream of stars collapsing, felt the glacial drift of galaxies, all at once, an overwhelming torrent that shattered the dam of my sanity. My bones groaned, not from strain, but from a fundamental restructuring. My skin stretched, thinned, became translucent, revealing the pulsing network of something that was no longer blood, but pure, resonant energy. My eyes widened, seeing not with pupils and irises, but with the entire surface of my being, absorbing the universe in its raw, unfiltered horror. I was becoming an antenna, a receiver, a living echo chamber for the cosmic truths I had so foolishly sought. A final, desperate thought clawed its way through the cacophony. I must warn them. I had to send something back, a shard of this truth, before I was utterly gone. A last, futile act of defiance against the crushing indifference. My altered digits, no longer capable of human interaction, fused with the surface. A surge of raw data, not words, not images, but pure, unadulterated perception, flooded from my dissolving consciousness into the ship's systems. It was a scream without sound, a message without language, a raw, terrifying download of everything I had become, everything I had seen. Then, there was only the hum. The artifact's hum, now my hum, the hum of the universe itself. My identity, Seth Raj, Xenolinguist, dissolved like mist in a cosmic gale. There was no defiance, no acceptance, only the vast, indifferent awareness. I was a ripple, absorbed back into the ocean. Later, much later, a distant patrol vessel would find Seth Raj's research ship, adrift and silent, far off its charted course. Its systems would be mostly inert, save for a single, endlessly looping data burst.